It all began in the spring of 2014. I was 26, and my wife Clara was 27. We had been together for 5 years, married for 2. We met in college. She studied accounting, and I studied mechanical engineering. Our first encounter was at a fraternity party, hosted by a mutual friend, where we bonded over cheap sangria and truly awful dance music. From that first conversation, the chemistry was obvious. Clara was gorgeous in a sleek, elegant way. Long, dark hair, usually pulled into a flawless ponytail. Intense eyes that seemed to look straight through you, and a cool confidence that made everyone around her pay attention. She spoke in a firm but refined way that made you feel like you needed to rise to her standards. It drew me in like a moth to a flame. I was tall, brash, and determined to succeed. People said I looked older than my age because of the hard set of my expression and the intensity I carried around. Although we had our differences, we became inseparable quickly. Within a year, we decided to marry. I thought of Clara as the perfect partner, intelligent and assured, the kind of person who would challenge me to be better. She wanted a comfortable life, and I swore I would provide it. But marriage is not just two people. It is two families colliding. Clara's mother, Beatrice, never let us forget that. From the moment I met her, she wore disapproval like a badge of honor. She acted as if I were a stray cat her daughter had dragged in from the street. I tried to impress her at every turn, bringing flowers, offering to help around the house, but she had no interest in warming up. I remember our first dinner together. Beatrice leveled an icy stare at me across the table, then turned to Clara and said, "My dear, you deserve someone far more refined." In one sentence, she dismissed me, and in a strange way, that was her real introduction. She believed I lacked the polish that an accounting star with a prosperous future should marry. In spite of her disapproval, I married Clara. It felt like a personal victory, and I relished it. My father-in-law, Lionel, lived in Beatrice's shadow. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he mumbled pleasantries, but it felt half-hearted. He never crossed his wife's line of fire, so he nodded and stuck to talk about the weather or the garden. Clara also had an older sister, Miranda, married to Patrick. He and I actually got along at first. We would trade jokes about everyday life and talk about sports. He was not my best friend, but he was not hostile like Beatrice. Miranda seemed gentler than Clara. She came across as a bit fragile, and it was common knowledge in the family that she had been struggling with infertility for years. At the start of our marriage, Clara and I agreed to delay children. We wanted to travel, pay down our mortgage, and advance our careers. "We have plenty of time for babies," Clara would say, flipping her hair with that signature arrogance. "There are more important things to focus on first." Whenever she said that, I nodded and told her I supported her. Part of me liked the arrangement. I wanted to climb the ladder at the engineering firm, make a name for myself, and then think about children. The idea of waiting meant fewer constraints on my life. A year into our marriage, everything shifted. Beatrice had a fall and spent 2 days in the hospital. The doctor's advice was bed rest. The minute Clara heard, she panicked. If anyone could manipulate Clara's thoughts, it was Beatrice. For years, Beatrice had hammered into her daughters that family is everything, and that a woman's greatest pride is producing an heir. Clara insisted on staying by her mother's bedside the entire time. I brought flowers, but Beatrice practically ignored me. If she spoke, it was to say, "Do you not have something better to do than stand there? Or why does your firm not keep you busier?" She never missed a chance to jab at my career, my presence, anything about me. Once Beatrice returned home, she turned up the guilt about not having grandchildren. Then came her and Lionel's 30th wedding anniversary, with the entire extended family attending. It was a big affair, formal wear, a catered dinner in a small ballroom, and an atmosphere of forced cheer. From the start, I sensed something heavy was coming. Beatrice, never one to miss a dramatic entrance, used the microphone that night to describe her fragile health and her fear that she might never become a grandmother. During that same party, Miranda broke down in tears and confessed that she had been to numerous fertility clinics with no luck. She could not conceive, and the weight of it was crushing her. Patrick stood behind her with a tight mouth and said nothing. Beatrice, in full theatrical gloom, lamented that she just wanted grandchildren. Miranda had tried, but there might never be a child in the bloodline. If Clara kept waiting, Beatrice might be gone by then. She cast a disparaging glance at me, as if I personally kept her from a grandchild. The seeds of tension sprouted right there. On the drive home, Clara was visibly upset, tears brimming in her eyes. "I cannot stop picturing my mom in that hospital bed," she murmured, voice trembling. "What if she never holds a grandchild? What if Miranda never does?" She trailed off and stared at the streetlight sliding past. I squeezed her hand and said we had time and should not rush. Inside, doubt swirled. No matter how calm I sounded, I enjoyed my independence. On some level, I resented the idea that anyone would force me into fatherhood before I was ready. In hindsight, I realized I harbored a deep anger. I was good at my job, had built a decent life with Clara, and wanted to keep pushing until I achieved something remarkable. The more the subject of children came up, the more my resentment toward Clara and her family grew. In quiet moments, I let the grudges fester. If Clara, or especially her mother, pushed the topic of grandchildren, I wanted to lash out. My sarcasm sharpened around Beatrice. A few months after her anniversary meltdown, she visited unannounced. Clara was napping upstairs, and I was on the couch scrolling through my phone. Without knocking, Beatrice let herself in and stood in the hallway. She scanned the living room like a detective searching for dust and pursed her lips. How do you keep this place so improvised? Clara must hate living in such disorder. I folded my arms. Maybe if you called before barging in, I would have had time to tidy up. Beatrice glared and said such arrogance. I wonder how my daughter tolerates it. She was pushing me, and I was itching for a fight. I wanted her out. If Clara woke up to see us trading barbs, I would never hear the end of it. Eventually, Beatrice left with a huff. I just wanted to check on my daughter. She slammed the door, and I smirked, feeling like I had won another round. Time passed, and though we never said it out loud, Clara and I both understood that fertility had crept into the house like an unwelcome guest. We mostly avoided the subject. Sometimes she would mention her mother's health or some new fertility method Miranda was trying. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I had just returned from the gym. Clara called with a shaky voice. "Jason, I am at the hospital. It is Miranda." She tried to hurt herself. She paused, gathering herself. "She is in critical condition. You should come." I grabbed my keys without hesitation, my mind racing. I was no fan of Miranda's persistent weeping about needing a baby, but I never wished her harm. If she had been pushed to attempt suicide, the emotional toll must have been immense. When I arrived, Clara's eyes were red from crying, and Beatrice stood near a vending machine with arms folded, wearing that frigid expression that always made me want to throw something. She barely glanced at me, as though I were not worth her time. Patrick paced in a corner with his jaw clenched, muttering to himself. I approached Clara. "Is she going to be okay?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Clara nodded, tears rolling. "Physically, maybe. They are pumping her stomach. She overdosed on pills." She cast a glance at Beatrice, then back at me. She could not handle the stress, the constant reminder she cannot have a baby, Mom's expectations. It all built up. Beatrice's eyes flicked to me, cold and accusatory. "You do realize," she hissed, "that if you and Clara would just have a child, Miranda would not feel all this pressure alone." Her audacity took my breath away. "That is not how mental health works," I retorted, my voice shaking with rage. "Do not blame me for your daughter's breakdown." I saw Clara tense, but she did not defend me. She never did in front of her mother. 2 days later, Miranda was discharged, still frail, and the extended family gathered at Beatrice's house to discuss solutions. The living room was stifling, everyone perched on couches or armchairs, subdued. Beatrice presided like a grim queen, her pained gaze sweeping the room. I listened to the same laments. No grandchildren, heartbreak, a mother's dying wish. My patience wore thin. I ventured a suggestion. "What about adoption?" I asked. "Miranda and Patrick could consider it. It could be wonderful." Beatrice practically spat at the word. "Adoption is not a real grandchild. We are talking about our bloodline." I felt my lip curl. That is archaic and cruel, do you not think? Silence followed, and Clara glared at me. Miranda looked mortified, hugging herself tight. Patrick sat with an annoyed expression, as if he also found my suggestion ignorant. "Adoption is complicated and expensive," he muttered, refusing to meet my eyes. I did not know it then, but that moment planted the seed of a plan I never saw coming. A few weeks later, Miranda and Patrick began visiting our house more often. Sometimes they came under the guise of checking on us or having dinner. I would catch them whispering with Clara in the kitchen, voices low. The moment I entered, they went quiet. Clara grew secretive with her phone. When it buzzed, she would snatch it and angle the screen away. I pressed her, and she brushed me off. "I am just talking with Miranda. She is still fragile. You would not understand." I might have left it there, but my gut said there was more. My frustrations with Clara grew. She was arrogant and dismissed me whenever I questioned her. I started lashing out, often with petty insults and digs at her intelligence. Maybe if you use that fancy accounting degree to see what a fool you are being, you would see the big picture, I snapped once after she refused to discuss her secret texts. Things reached a boil on July 5th. I pulled into our driveway and saw a cluster of cars. Beatrice's, Miranda's, Patrick's, and a few others. My heart pounded, a sense of doom twisting in my stomach. Inside, they were assembled in our living room with somber expressions. Beatrice turned her frosty gaze on me. Clara motioned to a seat. "Jason, sit." I sat slowly and forced my face to remain neutral. "What is this about?" Beatrice answered with a lethal hush. "We are here to settle the matter of grandchildren." My jaw tensed. "Is that so?" "I already mentioned," she said, raising a hand to dismiss me. "We are not discussing adoption or test tubes or any sacrilegious approach." I scanned the room. Clara stared at the floor, Miranda bit her lip, and Patrick had the audacity to grin. "What is going on?" Clara suddenly snapped, her arrogance turning acidic. "Stop pretending to be clueless, Jason. You have been stubborn about me having a baby, and I'm tired of waiting." I frowned. "I never said never. I want it on my timeline, not your mother's." Beatrice seized the moment. "Our solution is simple," she said in an eerily calm voice. "Since Miranda cannot conceive, and you refuse to step up as a father now, Clara will conceive a child with Patrick. Miranda will raise it as her own." My breath caught. I stared in disbelief, but no one blinked or laughed. This was not a joke. "What?" I croaked, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Patrick smirked and leaned back. "We are not asking for your permission. It is basically done. We just wanted you to know." Fury ignited. I glared at Clara. "So that is it. You all meet behind my back and come up with this twisted plan, and I am the last to know." She shrugged, her voice clipped. "It is for Miranda. She is depressed. She tried to kill herself, remember? This baby will give her hope." "You are selfish, Jason. You always have been." Beatrice jumped in. "Be grateful we are including you at all. You can stay or go. The baby will be from this family, with or without you." Something in me snapped. "You are all insane!" I roared. I lunged at Patrick, fist swinging. He was caught off guard, and my punch landed square on his jaw, sending him sprawling onto the carpet. Miranda screamed. Clara grabbed at me, but I shoved her aside, adrenaline surging. "Get out of my house!" I bellowed. They fled, not without hurling insults. Beatrice shrieked that I was an unworthy husband. Miranda sobbed, and Patrick clutched his bruised jaw while muttering curses. Clara was last to storm out of the living room, then barged into our bedroom with her face contorted by anger. I followed and slammed the door behind us. "You are letting them manipulate you into sleeping with your brother-in-law. That is vile!" She glared and flipped her hair over her shoulder. You have no idea how hopeless Miranda feels, and you, with your big dreams and arrogance, you would never consider fatherhood on the timeline we need. My mother is right. She might die without seeing a grandchild. You are too blind to care. You are the blind one, I shot back, giving in to that wretched mother of yours. Are you so spoiled and entitled that you cannot see how disgusting this plan is? Our argument spiraled into shouts and curses. She locked herself in the bathroom, and I left the house to cool off. My anger was lethal, and I was disgusted by how exhilarating it felt to finally let it out. Beneath that anger was a chill I could not shake. My wife had chosen a plan so skewed it bordered on madness. The next day I confided in Noah, my best friend. We drank coffee at a small bistro while I recounted the confrontation. Noah listened with his jaw dropping. That is beyond messed up. You might need to leave for a while and separate yourself from that toxicity. I scowled. Let them think they have won. Not a chance. Images crowded my mind of sabotaging Patrick or putting Beatrice in her place. Some dark impulse wanted me to make them pay for humiliating me in my own home. Noah shot me a sharp look. Careful. That rage will eat you alive. When I returned that evening, I found Clara at the dining table, eyes rimmed with tears. She said her mother was in the hospital again after a dizzy spell. I folded my arms. So what? The old bat can drop dead for all I care. Clara stiffened, shocked. How can you say that? Because she is a manipulative harpy, I snapped, and you are just as bad for letting her push you into this. Clara stood with blazing eyes. Do not talk about my mother like that. She is the only one who truly loves me. You have always been too focused on yourself, your career, your comfort to see anyone else's pain. And you, I shot back, are you selfless? Nothing more selfless than volunteering to sleep with your brother-in-law for your mother's approval. She slapped me. The sting was instant and fueled my anger. For a second I considered retaliating, but I clenched my fists at my sides and refused. Go ahead, I seethed. Defend your mother's sick plan. They are rotten, just like her. Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I hate you, she said, voice quavering. She brushed past me, grabbed her handbag, and walked out. For a few days, we lived separate lives under the same roof, barely speaking. When we crossed paths, it was barbs and glares. Then, in a move that caught me off guard, Clara apologized. She came home one evening, knocked on my study door, and stepped in hesitantly. I should not have slapped you, she said without meeting my gaze. And I am sorry for what I said. I leaned back, arms folded. Why the change of heart? She sighed, tears threatening again. Miranda is on suicide watch. My mother is in the hospital and still scolding me about not being pregnant. The entire family is counting on me to fix everything. I feel trapped, but I cannot betray them. They are my family. I studied her carefully. Her eyes were red and tired, but her chin still had that haughty tilt. You feel guilty. That is obvious, I said. But do you regret what you almost did? This plan with Patrick. She swallowed. Mom insists it is the only way. I cut her off. You are not a child. You can walk away, but you will not. Her lip trembled. If I walk away, who helps my sister? She is so fragile, Jason. This might kill her. I watched her for a long moment, haunted by old nightmares of not being enough for her. That fear that I could never compete with her family's grip. Despite my rage and bitterness, part of me still wanted to be recognized as good enough in her eyes. Why? I did not know. Maybe pride. Finally I sighed. Fine. We will discuss having a baby, our baby, on one condition. No more talk of Patrick impregnating you. That is off the table. She blinked in surprise. Seriously? You would consider that? I shrugged, wanting to show I had the power to decide. If it shuts your mother up and keeps you from that travesty with Patrick, yes. Clara's face lit with something like relief. There was entitlement in her eyes, too, as if I owed her this concession. In my darkest corners, I realized part of me offered it because I wanted to keep control, to keep her from giving her body to someone else. We sealed a fragile truce that night and shared a bed for the first time in days. Our intimacy was charged by desperation rather than affection. Still, we pretended to move forward. Over the next 6 months, I gave Clara anything she wanted. If she wanted a new couch, I ordered it. When she mentioned a spa day, I booked her a weekend at a high-end resort. She soaked up the attention, growing more smug with every gift. "This is exactly what I needed," she would say, leaning in to give me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. I enjoyed the sense of power it gave me. Yes, I was bending over backward, but I took a grim satisfaction in knowing that her happiness and her mother's and sister's hopes hinged on my generosity. I dangled the possibility of fatherhood in front of them like a carrot, letting them think I was almost ready while I fed my sense of superiority. Beatrice, recovering from her hospital stay, was uncharacteristically quiet during those months. When we crossed paths, she scowled. She was furious that I had shut down her plan for Patrick to impregnate Clara, but she was cunning enough to wait. Miranda seemed to improve. She stopped showing up at my house in tears and kept to herself, focusing on therapy or medication. One evening, after Clara spent a day shopping, she came home glowing. "I found the perfect spot for a romantic trip," she said. "Let's go to the Amalfi Coast, or maybe the Seychelles. I want to celebrate us and a new start." She waved a glossy travel magazine. I smirked at the irony. "I did not know you were a fan of beaches and sunsets. I thought you were more of a city person." She tossed her hair. "I can adapt. Besides, once we conceive, we will be busy. We deserve a getaway before real responsibilities." I recognized the loop. She bragged about our financial capacity, mostly my money, and reaffirmed that a future child was coming. Something about her casual assumption that I would fund everything while she took the spotlight made me want to laugh, but I did not. Instead, I decided to up the stakes to show her I could still surprise her. I planned a grand gesture, plane tickets to the Amalfi Coast for 2 weeks, and a villa perched on the cliffs. It cost a small fortune, but part of me wanted to see how far her arrogance would go, how grateful or not she would be. On February 20th, the day the tickets arrived, I hurried home to surprise her. The house was quiet. I found a note on our bed in Clara's delicate handwriting. I started reading, my heart pounding. "Jason, nothing in our relationship changes, no matter how much we try. I love you, but I also love my family, and I cannot watch my sister suffer. My mother's health is precarious. They need me to provide an heir to our family's line, one that will belong to Miranda and Patrick since her body cannot carry it. We have tried to reason with you, but I realize you will never truly agree. That is why I am doing this on my own. I am leaving for a month. Patrick, my parents, and I will be out of town. We will not tell you where, because you would interfere. I have to do this for Miranda. This does not change us. I will come back when I am pregnant, and we will pretend nothing happened. The baby will be theirs to raise. This is my final decision, and I know you love me enough to understand in time. Do not try to find me, Jason. I am sorry." I stood there with the paper shaking in my hands, a slow tremor building in my chest. My first reaction was a sickening drop of defeat. She had chosen them. She had chosen him. Patrick. The rage inside me surged like a storm tide. I flung the travel folder across the room, tickets spinning and skidding across the floorboards. My attempt to control the narrative with grand gestures had been worthless. She wanted something else, to prove herself to her mother, to appease her sister, and to keep me as a convenient wallet. I sank to the edge of the bed and read the note again until every line was carved into my memory. Then a colder clarity settled over me. I was done being their puppet. Yes, I was hardly innocent. I had been controlling and cruel in my words. I had enjoyed making Clara jump through hoops for affection. But her betrayal dwarfed any of my faults. They had conspired in my house and taken my marriage hostage. 2 days of simmering hatred later, I acted. I called a realtor about renting out the house. I listed most of the furniture online. I sold the car. I closed our joint accounts and moved the funds. I left a token balance that would not cover a week of groceries. If Clara came back pregnant from her righteous mission, she would find an empty shell and no access to my money. When I told Noah I was leaving the country, he stared like I had slapped him. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, worry etched in his face. "Absolutely," I said. "I am done funding parasites. Let them figure out how to raise the miracle they want. They will not see another dime from me." "If you need money, I have you," he said carefully. "Promise you will not do something reckless." I forced a crooked smile and told him I had already quit my job and booked a flight for the next day. The morning I left, I stood in the barren living room. Only a single chair and a wobbly table remained. The emptiness felt like a verdict. I took one last look, picked up a duffel bag in one hand and Clara's abandoned phone in the other, and headed for the airport. When the plane lifted off, anger drowned out every other feeling. I was 26, nearly 27, with a mechanical engineering degree and a burning need to disappear. Australia offered distance and anonymity. The long flight into Sydney felt like a tunnel with no return. 3 weeks after I landed, I was living in a musty sublet above a small grocer in Marrickville. On a slow Saturday, curiosity got the better of me. I powered up Clara's phone and connected it to the Wi-Fi. Notifications cascaded in. One thread caught my eye, a family WhatsApp group titled Baby. I tapped it. The newest message was from Miranda. It finally happened. Everyone. After more than 20 tries, we are going to have a grandchild. Photos followed. Patrick looked smug and half-dressed, and my wife, stood in nothing but underwear with sweat-dark hair and a triumphant grin. Another image showed a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. A wave of nausea hit me. My head pounded. I knew what they had planned, but seeing it was a different kind of wound. I killed the screen and paced the apartment until my legs ached. By morning, the fury had cooled into a numb resolve. I kept going to work. The best short-notice job I found was at a logistics warehouse on the edge of the city. The pay was decent for what it was, and the hours gave me space to think. I hauled crates, loaded trucks, and tried to push Clara from my thoughts. On a Sunday morning, Clara texted the number she knew by heart. "Love, I am home now. Everything went perfectly. I am pregnant with Patrick's child. Please come back. I have news for you." I stared at the message for a long beat and laughed once, a sound without humor. She dared call me love. More messages arrived in quick, breathless bursts. "Darling, come home. We need to talk. The accounts are empty and the cards do not work. I need money for groceries." I set the phone down and let it ring when she tried calling. I blocked her. Then the calls came from Miranda, from Patrick, from Beatrice of all people. I blocked each in turn. In their deranged logic, I was still part of the safety net. They wanted my money and my silence. They would get neither. That evening, my father called my new number. I answered with a tight jaw. "Jason," he said, "your mother is worried. We heard you ran off to Australia. Clara says you abandoned her and left her penniless." "Stay out of it, Dad," I said. "Clara left to get pregnant by her sister's husband. That is the truth. She and her mother manipulated everyone." Silence. Then, in a halting voice, he asked if I was sure I was not misunderstanding. I said I would send him the pictures. Then I hung up. The next day he called again, furious and stunned. "That woman is unhinged," he said, "and your mother-in-law is worse. I cannot believe they did this to you. You did the right thing." For the first time in months, I felt something like vindication. Over the next weeks, I turned Clara's phone on occasionally, out of a grim urge to watch them scramble. Their messages grew frantic. Beatrice accused me of endangering her precious grandchild by causing stress. Miranda pleaded that we could still be one family. Patrick grandstanded about responsibility and maturity. I blocked them all for good. My father visited for a short stretch. I helped him book travel so he could see that I was not spiraling. Having him around gave me a thread of stability. I kept working until a better opportunity surfaced. A small manufacturing firm in Melbourne needed a junior process engineer. I jumped at it and moved south, trading the sublet for a light-filled loft above a cafe. Australia became both refuge and staging ground for a new life. Months later, I filed for divorce. Noah connected me with a lawyer he knew from university who was now based in Victoria. She listened to my story with a composure that barely concealed shock. We compiled everything. Clara's handwritten note, screenshots of the group chat, a timeline of events and transactions. The case was simple. She abandoned the marriage to conceive a child with her brother-in-law and then demanded financial support. We filed and waited. Then another twist reached me through Noah. Clara had miscarried. She lost Patrick's baby, either from stress or some medical complication. Beatrice blamed me loudly because there was nothing she would not lay at my feet. Miranda turned on Clara, and they had a brutal falling out. Their house of cards collapsed on their heads. Nearly a year after I left, I received a video call from an unknown number on my new phone. I answered on impulse and kept my camera off. Clara's face filled the screen. She looked drawn, older, with hollow eyes and a grey pallor. "Jason," she said in a ragged whisper, "please do not hang up." I did not speak. "I lost the baby," she said. "The doctors had to operate. I cannot conceive again." Her voice shook. I cut ties with my mother and with Miranda and Patrick. None of it was worth it. I am so sorry. A tide of conflicting emotions surged and then receded, leaving me dry. I felt no pity. If anything, there was a bitter satisfaction. She had gambled our marriage and lost. "Let us keep this brief," I said. "You made your choices. You confused love with blind obedience. You wanted to please your mother and expected me to bow. Now you are living with the consequences." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know," she said. "I was arrogant. I was cruel. I let them control me. Can we fix this?" "Could you ever forgive you?" I said with a small, cold laugh. "No. I hope your mother never sees any grandchildren. She manipulated you into an insane scheme, and you went along. That is on you. You will carry it." She sobbed openly. "The doctors say my health may never fully recover. I have no one." I ended the call. She tried again twice. I blocked the number. In late 2019, the divorce went through. The court granted a dissolution that left Clara with almost nothing. I was ordered to pay limited support for a single year. After that, we were done. Then the pandemic hit in 2020, and the world shut its doors. I spent those months alone in the loft, walking empty streets and thinking about what I had become. I will not pretend I was a saint wronged by villains. I used money to control Clara. I lacerated her with sarcasm when she did not meet my expectations. I delighted in outmaneuvering Beatrice. The ugliness in me did not vanish because they were worse. But their betrayal, sanctified by family duty, was the final fracture that ended everything. Work became my anchor. The Melbourne firm grew, and I moved into a lead role on a line modernization project. I threw myself into efficiency audits and safety instrumented systems. I learned the city's map by early trams and late-night taxis from the plant. I learned how to sleep without replaying that living room tribunal in my head. I learned how to stop checking the old WhatsApp thread like a scab. Years later, I can admit that my anger kept me afloat at first. Then work took over. Then a quieter life. I no longer measure myself against Beatrice's contempt or Clara's demands. I measure myself against the man who left a stripped house behind and ran toward a sky over the Pacific. I do not miss the person I was. I do not miss any of them. When people ask why I left the country in my 20s, I usually say I wanted sun and a new challenge. It is simpler than explaining bloodlines and ultimatums, and a living room full of solemn faces telling me my wife would bear a child for another couple. It is simpler than telling them that once you have seen the limits of what love can excuse, you either burn down, or you walk away and build a different life from the ashes.